Then we will see if there's been any public comment. That public comment may have been received either in person here in the meeting or via email. If you are going to speak to us tonight, you will need to, when you come up, give us your name and address. After we hear public comment, then we'll deliberate amongst ourselves and we'll render a decision. If you'd all stand, we start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'd face the flag and recite. Judy, would call the roll, please?
Mr. Cotter?
Here.
Ms. Cooper?
Here.
Ms. Stammeser?
Here.
Mr. Jewell?
Here.
Mr. Alexander?
Here. Okay. The first item on our agenda tonight is the election of officers. This is something that we're required to do every April. So I'll ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss that.
I'll make a motion to adjourn for executive session.
I'll second.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Cotter?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Well, I'd like to proceed to move that we elect Sean Cotter for vice chair for the term of April 2023 through May 2024.
I'll second that.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Cotter?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Ms. Stammeser?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Is there a motion to elect the chair for the term?
I will be glad to move for Gary Alexander to be named chair for the term of April 2023 through May 2024.
I'll second that.
Ms. Stammeser?
Yes. Excuse me. Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Cotter?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper? Mr.
Yes.
Alexander?
Yes. Okay. All right. The next item is our acceptance of the documents and approval of the meeting minutes from our March 15th meeting. So is there a motion to accept those?
Sure. So moved.
Second.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Ms. Damasser,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't here.
and Ms. Cooper.
Yes.
All right, the procedures for our cases this evening. We're responsible for the review of construction and modifications or alterations to any site in the area subject to architectural review under provision of the zoning code, section 153.170. We have the decision-making authority in these cases. Anyone who intends to address the board this evening must be sworn in. So if you intend to address us tonight, please raise your right hand and answer in the affirmative that you swear or affirm. Let's see, I don't see. Mr. Taylor, are you going to speak to the board tonight? Okay, then please, you need to raise your right hand. Anybody who's going to speak to us needs to raise their right hand and be sworn in. Okay, all right. Or if there's a possibility you might. Okay, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony to this board? Okay, all right, thank you. We're going to, the first three items, we're going to treat as a sort of somewhat consent agenda light. And we'll discuss the consent agenda procedure for future meetings later during communications. So our thought was this evening that these first three items, we would have a very brief staff description of that particular item. If no one in the audience, whether it's the applicant or resident or board member, wishes to speak regarding that item, we'll just vote on them together. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. All right. So our first case is the Begley residence at 6199 Dublin Road. It's a minor project review. It's a request for exterior modifications to an existing single-family residence on a 1.32 acre site, zoned limited suburban residential district, and is located southwest of the intersection of Dublin Road with Short Street. Rati, please go ahead.
Thank you for the introduction. Good evening, board members. My name is Rati. The case is for review and approval of exterior site modifications to an existing single-family residence located at 6199 Dublin Road on 1.32 acre site. The site is zoned limited suburban residential district. This project is presented as noted in the staff report, which is in front of you all. Staff recommends approval of 1714 square feet of patio space at the rear of the home and 85 linear feet stepping stone walkway in front of the home with no conditions.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience who feels the need to discuss this? All right, board members? Okay, so we're comfortable with the presentation. Okay, let's move on to the second item. And we'll vote on all three of these together.
Mr. Chairman, I think since they are not on a consent agenda, we need a vote at this point,
Okay,
please.
all right.
Or we can vote on all three at the end, but they each have to be separate votes.
Maybe easier just to vote on them separately now.
Yeah.
That's fine. We can vote on it now. Okay, is there a motion to approve the minor project for exterior site modifications at this address?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Ms. Damasser,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, the second item on the agenda is the Brown Harris Cemetery. This is a minor project review. It's a request for the construction and design of a cemetery to preserve a historic grave site. The 0.13 acre site is zoned ID1 Research Office District and is located northeast of roundabout Shire Rings Road and University Boulevard. Ms. Holt will be our presenter. So Sarah, it looks like you're all set.
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everybody. This case is for the review and approval of site improvements at a historic cemetery site, which is an Appendix G property. The project is presented as noted in the staff report, which you have, and staff is recommending approval with one condition which the applicant has agreed to.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that, to,
Let me check
Oh,
to see if there's,
ahead.
some public comment. That's okay. Does anybody wish to speak to this project? Sure, come on up. Wow. Sir, sir, you need to introduce yourself and give us your address, and were you sworn in?
Okay,
Okay, well, okay, all right.
I'm Gene Bostic. I'm a former trustee for Washington Township, and we're very interested in this project. Back when this was actually a cemetery, old cemetery, townships hadn't even been formed. That was back in the 1800s. In 1810, Washington Township was formed. This project is in Washington Township. So we, as Washington Township, and I'm speaking because of a meeting last night with the trustees, we want to be part of the project, and we're willing to go along and partner with the city of Dublin in making sure this project comes out a very beautiful project.
I'm assuming you've been involved in the planning that has gone up to this point, because you said you want to be a part of it.
And we were talking before the meeting started, and Councilmember Cram has been working with Washington Township, and it looks like there has been a lot of collaboration.
Is that,
Pardon me?
is that adequate for you?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay.
We've been working with city council person, Graham. She's been at several trustees meetings, so she's aware of it, council's aware of it. But we're very excited about the project.
Good. Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this project? This is pretty unique in terms of the history of our community. Okay,
It is. It's a wonderful project.
all right. Is there a motion to approve the minor project for construction of a cemetery?
I'll go ahead and continue that motion.
With the one
With
condition.
the one condition, make a motion to approve the minor project for the construction of the cemetery with the one condition. And do I need to read that condition now? Okay, with the one condition.
I'll second.
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you. All right, our third item on the agenda is the Trevor Furbay. This is a sign at 63 South High Street. It's a minor project review. This application is a request for the installation of a 6 square foot ground sign on a 0.26 acre site zoned Historic District, Historic South. The site is located northwest of the intersection of South High Street with Eberly Hill Lane. Mr. Klein will be our presenter. Welcome to our meetings.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. Good evening, board members. My name is Daniel Klein. This case is for the review and approval of one ground sign and painting of the front door and window trim at 63 South High Street. This project is presented as noted in the staff report, which is in front of you all. Staff recommends approval with no conditions.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak regarding this project? All right. Board members, any questions, comments, concerns? Okay. All right. Is there a motion to approve the minor project for the installation of a ground sign and exterior modifications to the building?
So moved?
I'll second.
Mr. Joel,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Ms. Amesser,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. All right, item 4, 83 South High Street. Minor project review. This application is a request for a remodel in addition to an existing two-story building on a .15 acre site zoned Historic District, Historic South. The site is located southwest of the intersection of Eberly Hill Lane with South High Street. Sarah will be our presenter, so whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you again. This site is located within the Historic South District, and we have the same district north, south, and east of the site, and historic residential zone to the west. The site is outlined in yellow as shown here, just north of Penny Hill Lane and on South High Street, and Mill Lane is at the back of the property. You'll remember we've had two previous informals for this request, and that the site was previously used for commercial purposes. There's a shared parking lot and stormwater facility to the rear of the property. The cross-access easement was removed in 2017, and the owners wish to convert this structure to their personal residence. This is the Giles Weaver residence, built about 1830. And it's noted as contributing. And a couple of items to just call to your attention for going through the presentation. Please note the existing roof color, which is what we would call a traditional zinc color. And then also please note the existing paint colors, which the new property is proposed to match. Please also note the porch details on the left and the salt box roof form on the right. A little bit more context for you. The left photo shows existing conditions on the south side, and it's adjacent to another residential structure. And then the right photo shows the rear of the house. The porch will be removed to accommodate the addition, and Coast Wine is visible in the background in that photo. Here, the left photo shows that rear porch again as viewed from Mill Lane. The large tree in the center has been removed, and the spruce on the left will be removed. And on the right, we see the carriage house, which is a 1940 structure off of Mill Lane, which is proposed for a future home office. No changes are proposed to it other than removal of the arbor and patio, which actually is within the Mill Lane right-of-way on the far left side of that photograph. Looking at the site plan, we see the original house on the right and the carriage house on the left. Both are outlined in blue. The addition is seen in the middle in gray. And this area here is the existing shared parking lot and stormwater pond area that actually moves south of this particular site. It is subject to a couple of conditions of approval to ensure stormwater, access, and parking is all properly addressed at the time of building permit. Moving on to the elevations, looking at the South High elevation, just a few changes are proposed. We see new light fixtures, which are subject to a condition of approval, and we'll take a closer look at those under the materials slide. And then the new roof color, where just noting that the roof is such a prominent feature of the existing house. Taking a look at the north or the right elevation, South High Street is on the left side in this view. Note the low-pitched hyphens, which are subject of a waiver. These are appropriate connections for the addition. Here we see a historic window which will be filled in from the inside, which is a really creative, positive technique to preserve original fenestration. And here we see a fiberglass man door proposed for access to the garage. This is also subject of a waiver request. Here we can note that all windows and doors are arranged appropriately per the guidelines. The addition is proposed to be board and batten to contrast with the original horizontal siding, and all roofing will be the standing seam metal. This is the other side view on the opposite elevation. Now South High Street and the original structure is on the right-hand side. Note again the low-pitched hyphens. The roof heights are well below the original structure height. Again, the window arrangements are traditional in character and appropriate to the existing structure. And here I'd like to point out that the foundation proposed for the addition is identified as painted poured concrete. That is not in keeping with the code and the guidelines. The original structure has visible stone foundation. It's not a lot. It might be, 6 inches tall, but we do have a recommended condition of approval to address this. This is the rear or the view from Mill Lane. And again, please note that the height of the addition is appropriate. It's below the historic house. The addition is also inset from the original house, so it meets our code and guidelines in those manners. The garage door noted here is subject of a waiver. The proposed material is a composite of PVC over a steel core. Note here the new chimney and cap as described in the staff report. And then just for orientation, there are French doors and transoms for patio access. Looking at materials, the siding, trim, and fascia material will be the LP Smart Side in the smooth finish. And here's where we talk about the colors, which again are proposed to match the original structure. The body will be painted Rookwood Shutter Green, and then the trim and fascia will be painted Classic Light Buff. The roof material, as I mentioned, is proposed to be a standing seam metal for the entire house, proposed in Classic Bronze. Both staff and our consultant believe that a more historic color is a better choice. And we noted that the zinc color is the original color for the structure. So we would like to see something like the dove gray on the screen. Please ignore the X, or the gray zinc color. And that's recommended as a condition of approval. The windows and doors are from Sierra Pacific. They are aluminum clad wood, finished in sandstone as shown, and these will match the existing replacement windows on the historic structure. And here is a little detail of the chimney flue, which also matches one found on the historic structure. The proposed front porch light is as shown. It's from Bavolo, entitled French Quarter. Staff believes that this is too ornate, especially the curled hanger portion of it. So this is a subject of a recommended condition of approval to have something that is simpler and more in keeping with the vernacular style of the house. The fiberglass man door is from Therma-Tru in the same sandstone finish as the windows, and as previously mentioned, it's subject of a waiver. The garage door is from Clopay to be painted that same sandstone color, and the detailing is appropriate, and as previously mentioned, it's subject of a waiver. So the first waiver that we take a look at is for footprint size, and this was discussed in detail at the informal meetings that we had. This specific request is to allow a building footprint of 2,155 square feet, where 1,800 square feet is permitted based on the zoning code. This request equates to a 19.7% increase, which is within the board's purview. and the criteria are met or not applicable. Our next waiver looks at the roof pitch in 2 locations. This is at the hyphen connectors, and requested are pitches of 512 and 412, where 612 is a minimum requirement of the code. And as seen, this allows these low connectors that are most appropriate for the structure. So the criteria are met or are not applicable. Finally, we have a waiver to allow the composite garage door and the fiberglass man door where wood or clad wood is permitted. Criteria 4 is for a matter of convenience because it reduces maintenance. However, ease of maintenance in a non-high visibility area does benefit the district. We don't have deferred maintenance. Things look good. Staff supports this. The criteria are met, not met in that one instance, or not applicable. And finally, moving on to the minor project review criteria, these are either met outright, met with conditions or waivers, or are not applicable, as described in the staff report. So again, staff is recommending approval of all of the waivers. Staff recommends approval of the minor project with the conditions regarding the foundation cladding, the front facade lighting, roof color, utility plans, and then a comprehensive redevelopment study for stormwater parking and access. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have one question, and I think I know the answer, but I want it to be on the record here. I do believe that we've approved these alternative materials for both doors for past projects.
Yes, we have.
So we're not setting a precedent. This is not something new. We're not treating this applicant in any unique way. Yep.
That is correct.
All right.
And they're mostly not visible.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. All right. Mr. Taylor, would you like to come up?
That one. Are we on?
Your light's green. You're on.
Richard Taylor, 48 South High Street. I'm the architect for this project. A few comments. The site plan that Sarah put up there, that's not the most recent site plan that's been turned in for this because it doesn't show the new driveway on there. It showed the old arrangement. So we have designed a new driveway for that removes all the old pavement on that that was submitted some time ago. On the conditions, the condition of cladding the foundation, I'm not opposed to doing that. But in this case, if you look at the photographs or if you've been out to the house to see it, there's really only one place on the original house where the foundation shows that's very small. The rest of the siding literally comes to grade. And our intent is to do the same thing as much as we can with the addition and show as little foundation as possible. I don't think it's practical or it seems kind of wasteful to me to put stone cladding on just a few inches of foundation that will be immediately obscured by landscaping. So I'd like to see that thrown out. On the roof color, that's a little bit different. So the roof color currently is a color that that Julie painted it herself or had it painted herself some years ago. And she tells me that it was a darker color before, but that's not the original roof on the house. Metal roofs last a long time. They don't last 200 years. There is, I believe she told me there are at least 2 other roofs underneath that one, including shingles and another metal roof of some kind. But in spite of that, when I look around the district, and especially I'm going to hold up some examples. This is page 41 of the guidelines, and it shows the house at 113 South High Street with a black metal roof on it, and it says historic building color. Likewise, on page 50, it's a picture of 113 South High Street, and it has, if not black, a very dark roof on that. So we think that it's an appropriate color. It's not the zinc, but it's the color that it would have been painted. And again, since we have no idea what the original color was or even the original material, we think that's an appropriate color, and we'd love to keep that if we could. My only two comments are on the last two conditions. Number 4, I'm a little bit confused at this. The only modification to utilities that we're aware of is there's a sewer line, the house soil line that runs back to Mill Lane. We know that it is in bad shape, and we know that it's going to have to be replaced, but until we actually remove the back porch, take the fence out, take the pavement out, and excavate the site, we don't know really what the condition of that is. That's an item that will obviously be dealt with engineering and building during construction. Things like that have to be inspected and approved. The trench has to be inspected, et cetera, et cetera. So I mean, that's something that we are absolutely going to address, because otherwise we don't have proper sewer fall from the house. The fifth one I'm also a little confused about. I don't know what a comprehensive redevelopment study is. And I don't know why that would be something that would have to be presented at the building permit, because that sounds like something that that if engineering needs to see more detail, and again, there's a very detailed site plan that was not the one that was shown there, that was submitted, that's permit ready, that I think addresses all of that. And if the engineer has additional comments, we'll certainly work with the city engineer on that.
I think the intent, and you can correct me, sir, if I'm wrong, is the concern is creating a dam so that the stormwater can no longer flow in the manner it's flowing to the south. And so it creates a hardship on the adjacent property to the north. But I think if it's the goal is to address that. And I have a feeling you're going to need to address it, because it's a legal, as you know, it's a legal issue, and your clients are liable if you increase the runoff on that property. So I'm sure it may be the language here that we have that may be misleading, because I think they want to make sure engineering, and I see Sarah nodding her head, I think we want to make sure that engineering is okay, that there's a solution for that.
And I don't disagree with that, and I expect that to happen. I just don't know why it's a condition of the ARB approval. It's going to be something that we have to deal with in the field. I mean, I don't want to have to present something here again or to staff again that is going to be dealt with by the city.
No, and anytime we have a condition, you're not coming back to us with these kind of conditions. So, but Sarah has a comment I think you want to add here.
Yes, to add a little bit of perhaps enlightenment to both of those conditions. They each say at building permit stage, so clearly there is no coming back before this board. These are issues that were brought to the applicant's attention during the review process, and were not addressed, so we want to be sure that they are addressed and it's on the record that they will be taken care of at building permit.
In that context, I agree with number 5, because I think it does say what Sarah just said. However, number 4 says that we'll provide detailed plans or modifications to the satisfaction of staff. I assume that means planning staff. And as I stated, we can't know what the condition of that sewer line is until we start building.
You're not going to come back to us with that. That's a building.
I know, but I don't want to have to go back to planning. I want to go from here to building department and zoning.
So 4 pertains to engineering, having to do with utilities. And it also says any modifications to utilities. If there are no modifications, then nothing needs to be presented.
So could we change that to read modifications to the satisfaction of engineering staff? Because typically in these planning reports written by the planning staff, when you say staff, it means planning staff. Would that be okay?
It doesn't. Staff is a global.
We've used the term pretty generally, so.
Yeah.
And maybe.
All right, so we all agree I'm not coming back
Well, can
for
we,
4 and 5 here or there.
no, you're not coming before the board, but can we change it to applicable? Satisfaction of applicable staff?
We certainly can, if that makes everybody feel more
Yeah, I mean,
comfortable.
staff is a very general term. So his question is it going to have to come back before planning, excuse me, before Yeah, planning
Planning
staff, sorry.
staff, yes, and we do not deal with utilities.
So-
Engineering does.
Right, so applicable staff, whether it's engineering or building, it's certainly not planning.
That would be satisfactory.
Any other questions about that language? Okay.
I do want Sarah to respond to the other question or statements that he made about the roof color and
Do we want to see
there was
if there's
something
any-
else.
Before you do that, may I add one more thing? I'm looking at my notes and realize I left something out. The light fixture. We're withdrawing that. We're going to keep the existing light fixture that's on the house now.
Okay. Okay. Do we want to see if there's any public comment before we continue the dialogue? Is anybody here who would like to speak to the project? Okay. All right. All right. And did we receive any public comment regarding this?
We have not.
Okay. All right. Okay. You're checking for the most up to date. Okay. So let's continue the conversation. Rich, you want to discuss those other issues?
Well, like I said, the light fixture, the three things are the light fixture which we're withdrawing. The foundation stone, in our opinion, there's going to be so little shown that it would be wasteful, in my opinion, to clad that and then cover it up with landscaping. And then the third thing is the roof color. We think that the darker color is appropriate and there's precedent for it in the historic district.
So from what is so, I have to say, just from because certainly right now what's the, I don't remember, I didn't write it down. What's the foundation now? It's
It's going to be either a poured concrete or a concrete block foundation.
okay. So, but
Can we see the photos of the exterior of the house? Would that be possible?
I mean, when you say very little, what does that mean to me? So if you say very little, for me, we don't want, I mean, as I say in the code, we don't want block or poured. So I get what you mean, but it's certainly,
It'll be as low. I mean, since the grade varies, we don't know for sure, but it will be literally as low as it can possibly be. If you look at the picture on the left side there, that kind of moldy green board that you see on there is the last piece of siding that goes all the way to the brick. So there's nothing showing on that side. You can see under the porch, the siding comes all the way to the concrete. Can we go to the front views, please?
But for me, it's you're saying at the end though, there's going to be some of this potentially showing. So I see what it says here. So
I would say it's probably going to be 3 to 4 inches of stone showing or of concrete showing. But again, if they don't cut the grass, it'll be that tall. So
Because your wall section, and by the way, it's a very precise and very good set of drawings.
thank you.
But your wall sections show a lot more.
that's for me. It's
So
not.
when I look at the wall section, there's a lot more shown than a few inches. So that's
but you've submitted plans to Brand Conway before, and he's a stickler, and it's, I mean, that's a standard wall section. Look at it this way: if you can see where the grade or where the finished floor is, where that door is, we're matching that finished floor. There's really no room for additional foundation to show because we're going to be at the same level there. And I know that there are issues about how far the wood has to be above the ground and et cetera, but in the end, there's just not going to be enough showing there, in my opinion, I mean, if my clients have agreed if we have to clad it, we'll clad it. I just think it's going to be a lot of stone going on there that no one's ever going to see. And again, it doesn't match with the house. Can we go to the front views, the front left corner, please? So you can see on that right side, again, the siding comes to the ground, and I did submit a photo of the front left corner of the house too, or the front right corner, sorry. I guess it's the front left looking at it from the street. And that's the only place that you see any stone, and my client tells me that stone are blocks that she put up there to keep raccoons out, so. That she put in there to keep raccoons out of the basement, so they're not actually part of the foundation. Again, I don't want to let this whole thing hang on that issue. I just want you to know that we don't think it's necessary.
So that's the one issue. And then did you want to speak more about the roof, or have you said your piece on that?
Well, there's precedent in the district for very dark roof colors. We think it's appropriate on this house. The color that's on there now is not original, and it's not even the color that was on there when Julie bought the house. So,
Regarding that, I have a question when you have a moment, Sarah. I'm assuming the staff recommendation for the roof color is because the goal is to try to match the color of a material that was untreated and was the kind of material that you might have seen a turn metal or a tin roof on a structure like this. So I'm assuming that's the goal.
It is, and this is such an iconic structure. And besides the porch, the roof is a really prominent element on it.
Okay. Okay. We should discuss those 2 points. And do you have anything else right now?
just my last comment on the roof, the code that we're operating under now is very restrictive, as you know, and there are so few opportunities for a homeowner to customize their house or personalize it in any way. She's asking for a roof color that there's precedence for in the district. So I'd like to see her granted that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so there are 2 outstanding issues, I think, that, because I know we've discussed the waiver with the area before, and
Yep.
so it seems like the outstanding issues are the foundation and then the roof color. And foundation, when you read our code, the materials that our code specifies, and this is siding as well as foundation, are materials that are heavily tactile. So you see siding, you see stone, you see brick, smooth surfaces. Our code seems, because they suggest a different kind of construction, our code doesn't really leave room for. It does say the ARB can make a decision towards a more contemporary or modern material. The little office building that is to the south of this, now that building had the same requirement, and there's very little of that foundation visible, but they did, as to comply with the requirement, they were required to cover that. So, my concern a little bit with this is we don't know how the back's going to be graded, because regrade that back there's going to be some grading changes back there based on stormwater and how you control the stormwater. So there's an unknown. So potentially there may be more visible than we know on paper right now. It's just a reality of building. And I'm worried too, the building department is going to look at the proximity of wood to grade, which is a whole nother issue. And I didn't look closely, but I didn't see you putting like an ice and water guard on there and trying to protect that wood from close proximity. So, there's an unknown if we don't, because there could be more visible than we think if we don't require this, but I'm open to others' thoughts.
For me, that's my concern, is that how are you going to keep the grade to that spot? And we've had other people have the same thing, and we're going to have I think it's going to be difficult to grade it in a right way where we don't have that, where we won't see this and eventually have a smooth surface that's going to be sitting out there. So that was my original, because for me, when I look at the drawing, it looks deeper or higher than a few inches. So for me, I agree. It's going to be hard to keep the grade correct, or you're going to have to continually do something with that until the whole thing settles and it ends up in its final form. And if it's lower, we're going to be building stuff up on top of it. So that was my concern originally when I looked at the drawing.
Yeah, and that's my concern too, because we don't have the final project. We don't know what it's going to look like. And ultimately, we could end up with, a foot of foundation showing up. And that's why I think we need to leave it in there just to protect that aspect of it. So, but I don't know what's the final rule. Is it a foot or 2 foot? It's just, is it that specific in code?
It's just visible. Okay.
As in any visible, it's not that they're being required to make it visible, unless the building department wants them to remove.
If it's at
Siding.
all visible, yeah.
Right.
So that leaves open the option if they wanted to grade up and completely cover. you could grade up and completely cover all the foundation, but there's, as you know, there are issues with that, so.
Yeah, and that's the way the condition's written, the visible addition foundation. So,
You had mentioned that landscaping would cover it anyway, but isn't it the case that you're not to put landscaping right up to your siding? Doesn't that cause some deteriorations? It was my understanding, when I've been putting my landscaping in, that could cause some problems as well, so.
I would not recommend putting landscaping so it's touching the house, but a row of boxwoods a foot from the house would still conceal that from the view from the outside. But like I said, I'm not going to die on this cross, so just want to let you know how I feel about it.
Okay, all right, okay.
And
I appreciate that.
Yeah. yeah, I'm comfortable the way it's written with not any visible addition foundation should be clad. If there is nothing visible, then it's not a worry.
Okay, feelings about the roof.
So, I mean, originally, we don't know what the original color is. I see it is its color today, whatever the color is. I have to say, but we don't know what the original color is. We think it was something different in the past, right?
oh, Sarah, could you go over again what you and Gary were discussing about what you're basing this on?
So this house, like so many other structures in our district, is quite vernacular in appearance. There's not, apart from the porch, there is not a lot of ornamentation or a lot of fenestration on it. So again, apart from the porch, the roof color seems to be pretty iconic and original to the house. The applicant did not present to us any information about previous colors on the roof or layers of roofing material. We do believe that if there is an original roof on the house, if it needs to be replaced, it would be great to match at least the color so that that look, that appearance stays the same, if you can't repair it.
So to the architect or the owners, were your original plans to have two different colors? The original would stay gray and the back would be the darker color?
No, this has evolved a little bit. We never had two colors. I don't think we had two colors on that. It's always been one color, but really we're talking about a matter of taste here, aren't we? Because both colors are endemic to the historic district. They both exist. There's a couple of red roofs in the district. And I can't say, and I don't think anybody here can say, that the zinc roof is the original color. I mean, 1830, it was probably shingles. So.
I'd say on my side, I'm less concerned about the color as a general, because like I said, it's not the first roof, certainly. So from my side, I tend to read more aesthetic than it is anything else, because I don't know that it comes from the whatever the original color was. So.
No, we don't know the original
Exactly,
color.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just don't want two-toned.
Yeah. You don't want a bunch of colors, certainly like that. But I have to say, if it was a different color, I don't have a major issue saying it was the color they have here, because we don't know what it was originally, and it probably wasn't the same color.
So it sounds like,
I mean, I'm okay with it being different.
I don't know.
Well, yeah, to get clear in my mind, if you did the darker color on the new build, are we going to change the color on the existing house, or are we going to have two different colors?
I think he's replacing those.
Sorry, I should have been clear on that. The entire roof's going to be new. We're taking off the old roof of the existing
I
house.
thought it was that. That's why I
Then
understood it was going to be. But
I'm
good question,
totally
though.
fine with that.
Now I see that was the problem.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was
entirely new.
exactly what my question was.
Yeah. And I'm
Old and new
not,
will match, correct? Old and new will match.
and
All same color.
Metal? Because that also seems to be, yes, okay.
So we are suggesting that what I'm hearing here is we should strike condition 3.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
and then
that's
we'll
what
just- We'll
I
just
think.
keep what's requested as a part of the general application we vote on.
And for me, that color
Yes.
exists,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Okay. I think we've had a lot of conversation. We've discussed all the issues. Should we move through the voting on the motions? So the first one, as Sarah indicated, we've discussed in our two previous meetings. So is there a motion to approve the building footprint waiver?
I move to approve the waiver for the building footprint increase.
I'll second that.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Damisar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion 2. Do we have a motion to approve the roof pitch waiver?
So moved. The waiver for roof slopes of 512 and 412.
Second.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Damisar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
Okay. Motion 3. Is there a motion to approve the garage and man door waiver?
I'll move to approve the composite garage door and fiberglass man door waiver.
Second.
Yes.
Ms. Cotter, Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Damisar,
Yes.
And then finally, is there a motion to approve the minor project review, minor project for remodel and addition with the 3 conditions, with condition 4 as modified?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Ms. Damisar,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. All right. Item 5, 5707 Dublin Road. It's a minor project review. This application is a request for the construction of a 2-story residential addition and relocation of a shed on a 0.75 acre site zoned Plan Unit Development, Llewellyn Farms. The site is located approximately 300 feet north of the intersection with Hereford Lane. Ms. Singh will be our presenter. So whenever you're ready, Roddy.
Thank you and good evening. This is a request for a minor project review. For a minor project review for 2-story addition to a historic home located at 5707 Dublin Road. The 0.75 acre site is located at Llewellyn Farms. It has approximately 150 feet frontage along the Dublin Road. The home is listed in the National Register of Historic Places. It is a Greek Revival home which dates back to 1840. The home is characterized by large stone coins and a recessed entry. The iconic hip-gabled roof has a simple rectilinear facade and is an example of excellent craftsmanship. We can see 2 brick-burning fireplaces on the north and the south. The front facade is symmetrical with 4 fenestration bays. There are no front porches or columns. The typical characteristics of this home, as described by a consultant, are symmetry, regularity, simplicity, and rhythm. These are the existing conditions. The north and the south elevation facades are seen here in photos. The facades are 2 stories towards the Dublin Road and 1.5 story at the rear. The wood brackets at the eaves reflect simple design elements with minimal use of fenestrations on all the sides. This is the rear of the home. The rear of the home is 1.5 story with front-facing gable at the rear yard. Simple elevations characterize all the 4 facades of the home. In addition to the large cut stone coins, use of stucco and possibly German schmear is seen. The warm tone and the neutral color gives unique overall look to the home. The existing roof is metal seam roof, which is in blue silver grayish color. This is the proposed site plan. The existing home is shown here in blue, along with the at-grade patio, shared driveway, and the shed in gray color. Applicant is proposing approximately 2150 square feet addition to the approximately 2350 square foot home. Although the staff does not have all the dimensions, the footprint of the proposed addition seen here in green appears to be a deeper and wider than the existing home. The shed was already approved prior. The shed is proposed to be relocated at the southeast corner. It will be located within the setbacks. This is the street elevation or the front elevation, which faces the Dublin Road. The one-story hip gable roof addition is seen at the right of the existing home. The addition is at a setback from the front facade. However, the staff and the consultant feel that the addition would change the engagement with the streetscape, and that would change the overall character of this historic home. These are the proposed north and south elevations. The north elevation as a shop shows the existing historic home on the left-hand side, which faces the Dublin Road with an addition at the rear. The hyphen, shown here in yellow with the horizontal siding, provides an appropriate break between the old and the new. The existing home is about 38 feet deep, and the proposed addition is about 46 feet deep. The main portion of the addition has a pitch 812 with a height of approximately 22 feet, which exceeds the height of some of the parts of the original historic building. We can also see varying roof lines, which are very noticeable in the proposed addition. The south elevations, as shown here, which is at the bottom, will have garage doors on the left, with the historic building on the right-hand side, which will face the Dublin Road. The proposed addition right now has a mix of siding and stucco, along with some stone veneer water table. The upper floor in both the north and the south elevation has dormer windows, which does not keep well with the character of the house. On the south elevation, we can see a projecting culture stone wall, which the staff is not supportive of. It disintegrates the current form and the characteristics of the house. The main door in the south elevation is proposed to be clear insulated glass door. These are the proposed elevations. On the left-hand side, we can see the existing rear elevation with stucco and stone, which is the existing elevation. It has a front gable, 1.5-story addition at the rear, with very large cut stone coins. The elevation reflects unique pieces of form, materials, and openings. The proposed superimposed hyphen as seen here, which is shown in gray, is almost 50%, almost covers 50% of the historic fabric. Staff has concerns about the size of the hyphen and recommends a smaller hyphen length between the old and the new. The proposed rear elevation, which is seen on the right-hand side, it has varying roof pitches with one-story gable addition on the north side. The projecting one-story culture ward is also seen here on the right. The proposed rear elevation covers the maximum existing view from the yard, which is the present view. The disappearance of 1.5-story structure is a matter of design principle. Staff recommends design changes, reducing the mass and overall height of the addition and removing the cultured wall. These are some of the materials that applicant proposes. On the left top, we can see the cultural stone. It is a cultural stone water table, which is proposed all around. Staff does not support the use of it, as it does not complement the existing architectural details. And at the same time, it does create a false design feature. It also conflicts with the warm tone of the home. In the middle on the top, we can see the hardy lap siding, which is used for the hyphen. Staff will recommend a board and batten siding, which is used as a prototypical hyphen material within the district. The color of the siding as well does not complement with the existing tones of the historic home. Applicant proposes to use Santa Barbara stucco finish in the silver gray color. Staff would recommend exploring options, keeping in more with the existing color palette. The garage door used here is MR Classica doors in walnut color. The lighting which we see here is Anchorage outdoor wall mount lights, which are proposed on the north and the south facade, and some of the lightings is being reused from the existing facades. The applicants also proposes to use the aluminum clad windows. These windows were previously approved for the existing home in 2021. There are some neighbor concerns with regards to the construction. The immediate neighbors express concerns with the future constructions and its impact. As mentioned earlier, the owners of 5707 Dublin Road and 5715 Dublin Road share the driveway. The neighbors are concerned about the impact of the two-story addition in front of their garage. The elderly couple expressed concerns with regards to the duration and parking of the construction vehicles on the driveway. On the picture, we can see the shared driveway. The green is shown as the proposed construction, and we can see the existing construction as well. The design as it is would require some waivers. The first waiver is for the roof pitch, for the hyphen roof, as well as for the dormer windows. The criteria are met for this design proposals. They're either not applicable or they are just met. Planning does recommend approval of these waivers. However, these waivers will be reevaluated when there is a further or subsequent application. Another waiver is for garage door. Staff also approves the waiver for the garage door. The criteria are mostly met for this design proposal, and planning does recommend approval. Listed here are the minor project review criteria. As listed in the Historic District Code, the review criteria are currently not met. The design is not consistent with the Development Code and the Historic Design Guidelines as detailed in the staff report. Planning would recommend the approval of the roof and the garage door waivers with the current design. As mentioned earlier, these waivers will be reevaluated with future applications. However, planning recommends disapproval of the minor project review in its current form with the following findings. The addition is not subordinate to the original structure in height or footprint, thus not meeting the guideline section 4.12a. The mass of the addition overshadows the original structure in both size and complexity, not meeting the guideline section 4.12a, E, G, and H. The hyphen covers too much of the original's building fabric in conflict with the guideline section 4.12d. The materials proposed are not complementary to the original structure's fabric and are modern in nature, thus not addressing guideline section 4.12f. With this, I'm happy to answer any questions. Applicant is in attendance, and there are no public online comments, but however, there are comments via the neighbor over the phone, and they have a presentation to make as well, and they are in attendance as well.
And just to clarify, the waivers are only pertinent to this design.
Yes.
So they only apply if this design is approved. So, okay,
Yes.
thank you. Would the applicants like to come forward?
Have they all been sworn in? I didn't see them. Were you here earlier? Okay, they need to be sworn in. Oh, okay. Well, they're putting in.
Oh,
That's what I'm worried about, is swearing in. They were not sworn in.
Okay, okay. All right. Let me go back and find that page. All right. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to affirm or tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth in your testimony to this board? Okay. Please identify yourselves and then go ahead.
Turn your mic on. Heidi Balliard, Simplified Living Architecture.
Okay.
Emily Lukasik, 5707 Dublin Road.
Andrew Stowe, 5707.
Okay. Go ahead.
So yeah, just looking at working with this existing house, I know that, yeah, there's several things to talk about, so where to start? The one thing I guess I'll start with is just like the size of it. So the existing home is so small. It actually only has one bedroom in it. So they're looking to add a fair amount of space so that they can have a family within their home, like as they're a young couple and getting ready to have a family. So with that, like adding a 2-car garage to have some storage because there's no garage on the property. And then also just working with some existing characteristics of the home. Like there's currently, as we saw in the pictures of the back of the home, there's a cellar door on the back. So we're trying to maintain that access into the existing basement, and that's the reason that the hyphen is as wide as it is, because we're trying to access that existing opening that's down there. And with putting the stairs down there and then having space for an entry, it's really, we've minimized it. We did bring it back after I know the consultant had given us some feedback. We had made some adjustments to the design. So that came back as much as we could. And then also with keeping that lower roof pitch on it, just so it does look smaller, because it is a hyphen and there's structure on both sides of it. You can't really see how wide it is unless you're actually above that space, because we have kept the roof pitch lower. With it sticking out beyond the existing front facade of the house, without taking like a long addition all the way back and having to extend that driveway even further back, which it does start to go up a hill as well. Like it just makes it complicated with pushing that garage even further back in order to get the space that they need for additional bedrooms and utility space within the house. So that's why it moved out to where it is on the front elevation, but we did try to minimize that as much as we could so it doesn't affect how it's looking from the street. And then also with that, there's a lot of landscape at the front of the property on that north side of the home. So it's barely going to be, that addition's barely going to be able to, will barely be seen from the street as well. And two, it's, as we saw on the elevation, I think it was, of the distance from the front of the house to the new addition, it's, I think, about 30 feet. Well, no, it's about 40 feet back from the front of the house that new addition actually sticks out.
A couple more pieces to add. I know the color of the stucco was called out. We actually submitted that it be in morning fog, which is a tan color. We agree gray is not appropriate for the coloring of this house. And the second point on exterior materials to make is the color of the stone, believe it or not, on the house is actually more of a gray. It is so heavily mortared, though, that's what gives it its light appearance and its sandy appearance. So we spent quite some time selecting stone that actually matches as close as possible the color of the stone, and then it will come down to a great mason who can help us really match the color and the technique of the existing mortar. So those are just two additions to call out on the exterior materials.
And along with that, like, we have a picture, I'm not sure that it was submitted, but a picture of the existing home with that sample board that we have, along with new limestone that they were looking at potentially doing, and they're all practically a perfect match. But when we talked also with the company about the stone and mortar to use, they said because of the age of that stone, there would have been no tint in the mortar, because that's not something they could do back then. So they said using basic mortar for that is going to be the best option, and it'll get us back to that tan color that brings more tan out of the stones as well.
I know we're jumping around a little bit here, so I apologize. But in regards to the hyphen as well, I think it was referenced in part of the guidelines in 4.12D is more of the destruction of the original structure or the historical structure. And we have no intention of destroying anything or even walling over the original structure. We simply want that connector to be wide enough to accommodate a set of stairs and an entryway. And then it'll be the exposed stone on the interior as well. So if we were to demolish that, hopefully not demolish it, but if we were to ever have to remove that hyphen, it would be intact as is. So that's one note. And then kind of going back to the first point of discussion in terms of the subordinate nature or lack of for the addition. Subordinate isn't really defined in the guidelines, and so I'm curious as to what that term means. The square footage of the addition is less than the existing structure, and the height of the addition is less than the roof line of the existing structure. So I'm sure there is a definition that fits subordinate here, but I'm not familiar with what it would be.
We'll add some clarity to
Okay.
what that can mean, I think, in our discussion here. So it's a good question, and I think we can define that for you.
Thank you very much.
And I think just to note, like, I know that Dublin doesn't really, they don't normally approve stucco on, like, the ARB doesn't normally approve it. The consultant had actually mentioned in her report that seeing that there is stucco on the back of the existing home, that it was a good material to use. And the reason that they had chosen to use the horizontal siding on the hyphen in lieu of board and batten was just because it's so common right now. And it just, to them, it seems trendy, and they wanted to really keep with the historic nature of the home in doing horizontal siding.
Any initial questions for the applicants? I have a sort of legal, quasi-legal question. Do you have a shared access agreement with that driveway? Because I noticed your survey that was submitted showed an easement of 10 feet on your property. It wasn't clear if that was an access easement, or you're shaking your head.
I'm fairly confident it is, although we could certainly follow up with that document.
Well, I just, a lot of times when properties share driveways, there's a part of the documents, there's a shared access agreement, because I think, if there are issues here, understanding the legal basis and everyone's rights will be important. So I think that's something that, you may want to.
And yeah, that is one of our key concerns with the construction process, is making sure that that's as much out of the way of our neighbors as possible, because we don't want that for them either. So
We've already begun discussions with contractors on how to make sure that there is no impact to their parking abilities, to the driveway. And of course, if anything were to actually happen to the driveway, that is our responsibility.
Okay. Is there anybody here who would like to speak to this project? Please come up and identify yourself.
She may also need to be sworn in.
Okay. Excuse me, Ms., were you sworn in earlier?
Pardon me?
Were you sworn in at the beginning of the meeting?
No, I was not.
Okay. I'm going to swear you in.
Okay.
Right? Okay. If you would raise your right hand and answer in the affirmative. Do you swear to affirm or tell the truth, the whole truth, in your testimony to this board?
I do.
And would you identify yourself in your address?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, my name is Lanita Ayers. My husband, Larry Ayers, is with me here. We are not here to discuss the home under construction at all. Larry and I, the driveway is 100% on our property. And in the past, there has been, just not with this project, but other projects, heavy trucks that come in and dumpsters and things like that, which that little stretch of property for the ingress and egress to their own area gets cluttered. And that's being kind of polite. There's the picture I'm speaking of. And my concern is, since it is a shared driveway and heavy construction, I don't know how long building will take. And there have been in the past dumpsters that have sat there for a while, not just with them, prior to them. I'm just speaking on behalf of the driveway. And my husband is slightly disabled. He can't be out in the sun long. So he sits in the garage a lot in a chair, and that's where he gets his air. And he watches the people go up and down the pathway that Dublin put in, the all-purpose pathway. And at that time, when they put in the pathway, we decided to put in our driveway. It was not changed shape-wise at all. It was just re-asphalted. And it currently has shown a little wear, normal wear. I'm not sure when they put the pathway in, 7 years, I'm guessing. I don't really know. And that's all Larry and I are concerned about, is there is no blockage with the new construction that gets so close to, because when they back out and their company backs out, they practically back into our garage. And it's uncomfortable for them and it's uncomfortable for us. There's no privacy for either one, theirs or ours. And so that's all we're concerned about. We don't want to be responsible for any repairs to the driveway during construction. I personally don't want to sign, I know when concrete trucks come and whatever, they have a load limit. I don't want it, since it's our driveway, I don't want them to expect me to give approval for them to come in our driveway. I don't want to be responsible for any damage. And basically, that's the only reason we're here, is in concern of the driveway. That's all. I think I'm very happy for them and their new addition. I have no complaints. What they do and have done is very beautiful. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to, Sarah, is there a way, I know, because I know we had this issue on Riverview with the work that was being done down there. Is there a way to establish, before construction starts, an agreement on where construction vehicles travel?
I am sure that there is. I don't know exactly what that mechanism would be, but I would imagine that it's been done before, but how that would look, I am not sure.
Because I would think before, there needs to be some agreement, and maybe there's a path found that vehicles take to get back there, because you are right, a large remodel, frequently, we tell clients, plan on redoing your driveway after this project, because concrete trucks, block trucks, the weight they put on a driveway is significant. So your concerns are legitimate. So I think before the project goes forward, there needs to be an agreement on the access. A lot of contractors will establish a route they're going to follow, and then a means of remedy if there is an issue.
If I may make an addition, now this is what I was told, so please don't take me seriously, my word. I was told originally there was a gravel driveway that went along the side of the historical house. And when they built our house, and that was the Edwards company that built it, they were told that they could no longer put in a gravel driveway for the historical house. And so that's why they made our driveway so big. Our neighbors call it an airport landing strip, but that is the reason that this has turned into a complication, is because ours is so oversized. But with neither one of us being able to block it for any reason, there's a lot of space. There's no green space, and it's just like a condo parking lot almost. That's an exaggeration, of course, but that's kind of how we see it. And again, I do not want to make any conflict with their thoughts and what they want to do. I just want to protect our lawn, our sprinkling system, our garage doors, and our privacy. That's why I'm here. Okay? Is that all?
No, that's helpful. How do we make sure that gets taken care of?
My guess is that both engineering and transportation and mobility would need to weigh in on any kind of a different construction-only access, and that would have to be approved and meet certain criteria for safety for everybody involved.
If you came off the road at a different point than the curb cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise, I think it's a private agreement between the two parties.
Right.
It's a private contract between you and the other owners.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, you'd have to make a private contract. It wouldn't involve the city at all, but it would be between the two parties.
Where the neighboring property owner would agree to hold you harmless for any damages and to restore the driveway to its original condition upon completion. There's also the consideration of ongoing access for you during construction, because, as you say, dumpsters and roll-offs and large trucks there could impede your ability to pull out of the driveway for a period of time. That would be something you would want to consider with the property owner as well.
Is it possible that the council would consider putting a partial gravel driveway along the house where there was one initially before? We've been told that Dublin will not give anyone permission to put in any gravel driveway, even though the historical homes still do have them.
Just, you're asking for access on the other side of the house? I think there's a problem because of the creek.
Well, and that's what I was talking about, that if there was some kind of temporary situation, both transportation and mobility and engineering would have to approve that, and I'm not sure that it could meet criteria.
Well, sometimes people simply put down plywood. They take a route, like if you look at the space between this driveway and the current house, and they just lay down plywood. And they say you come in here, and you just use it. They just use the plywood. You're in control, because if there's no shared access agreement and it's your property, you determine what they can and can't do. So it needs, I think you need a formal agreement.
Yeah, and that's your leverage. is that
And your
if there
leverage
is no easement, then it's your driveway. You could block them.
You could say you can't use it at all.
Mhm.
So
I apologize, sir. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
that's
I'm
okay.
old. I'm 79.
If there is no easement, if they have no legal access to your driveway, then you hold the cards, and you could write an agreement, come to an agreement with them as to how this is going to progress during construction.
Yes, one thing I would request is that the trucks, not them per se, but the trucks that go in and out would be a temporary thing that didn't sit in our driveway and the dumpsters and, all of that. After the construction was over, which I have no idea how long that would take, we could go back to the original as what we have now. And if there would be any damage, that would be taken care of. I would expect that. But with Larry being partially disabled, we have had squads come in and out before. And Larry and I will park our cars over on Hertford because you can't park anywhere on Dublin Road, as you well know. So if they're having company for, say, Christmas or Thanksgiving or any time where there would be more than just their couple cars or ours, we take our cars and move them over on Hertford to make more room so our company has someplace to actually get in. And that, as we get older, that's more difficult to do. And so currently, I still will move my car. Larry puts his car in the garage and keeps it in the garage. And so it's not on the driveway at all. So it's just unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And it's bothered us for 33 years, but not so much as it has this past 7 and 8 years, because there's been a big turnover in the home. When the residents passed away, both of them, and then they had to have big sales, and they couldn't have garage sales. They had estate sales, and there were big trucks coming in, loading up lots of antiques, and it's just been a constant pain, to put it mildly. Then I know you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think before the conclusion is before construction starts, you need to have a concrete agreement with, and it may even be something drafted by, real estate attorney.
Yeah.
A concrete agreement, no pun intended, with your neighbors regarding how that's going to be used through the process.
Yeah, we totally understand your concerns, and they're absolutely legitimate. But unfortunately, there's nothing this board can do. So it's going to have to be through an agreement between you and your neighbors.
I have a question. Is it possible? Now there's 130-some-year-old pine tree at the end, and you've probably seen it at the end of the driveway. Most of the homes on Dublin Road have one drive going in, and then they Y, and then they have a green space, which creates privacy for the homeowners. they did not do that with us for the reason that because of the homeowners that were living in the historical home at the time, they wanted a gravel driveway to keep in touch with the historical thing. I mean, they were 100% historical. And so the builder took it upon himself, I'm sure he got approval from Dublin, to put this drive in this like this. But with not having any green space, I have always thought if we both went in the same entrance until we got past Dublin's easement there, and then they bite off a little bit, there is room to put a gravel driveway along the side of their house. And in saying that, if we, on our driveway, took some of our asphalt away, going straight up, and put in dirt and put in a green space of shrubs, trees, whatever, it would be attractive and it would solve a problem for both of us. And now I know that's wishful thinking on my part.
No, you may want to talk to a landscape architect or a design professional, because you can do what you want with that driveway. If there's no shared access agreement, you can, and there are clauses in the code that a design professional can look at for you, because I'm wondering if in this zoning district, homes are required to have a separate drive. Yeah, I know it's not in historic district, but I mean, I think somebody needs to look into this. We can't do it here, but you can do, if there's no shared access agreement and that drive is on your property, you control exactly how you want it. So if you want to invest a little bit with a design professional, landscape architect, they'll review the code. They'll tell you what you can do within the city, and then you can say, here are options, and you can discuss that with your neighbor. But it's really up to you. You have all the rights to do the way we understand this driveway now. If it's all on your property, you can do what you want.
We were told that when we bought our home. It was a new home, model home. We were told that. And Larry and I try not to be troublemakers and look out for our neighbors and be respectful. So we've never made a big deal about it. But you have to think, all our neighbors have been in their 70s and 80s. So this is a new way of life for us.
Yeah.
And
No, we understand. We just can't, we can point you in certain directions, but
Yeah.
we're not the body that can solve
okay,
your,
all right.
your issue.
All right. Well, thank you for your time and your suggestions. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that we do have a real estate attorney, and we will be fully intending to work with them on an agreement of sorts, so that there's no, and we've already discussed with contractors the implications of construction of this magnitude and what it can do to the drive, and if there are any negative impacts to their property, it'll be covered within that agreement. But that is very top of mind for us. We even have, I don't know if the plan's up, but the west side is going to, and potentially directly to the west where the shed is located now, we will be either putting plywood or gravel there for parking, temporary parking. Or at least that's the plan as of now. So we're actively thinking of alternatives to make sure that this isn't an impediment or an issue for our neighbors, because they have a beautiful yard and a beautiful home, and that's part of the reason we love living there, is because we try to keep up with them. So
Okay. All right.
so yeah, we definitely don't want to impact that in any
All right.
negative way.
Thanks for your sensitivity. Okay. Do we have any other public comment regarding this?
We have not.
All right. So there are a couple ways I thought we could handle this. We could either work from the general and discuss overall how we feel just generally about the proposal. And then because the staff is recommending we don't approve this. So if that's the case, if the majority of us feel that way in a general conversation, then go through a whole series of issues of why we might feel that way, and they would help the owners and the design professional to redesign things. Or we can just to me, it could be a little more orderly than if we just kind of scattershot and looked at the issues. All right. So let's just talk generally, looking at the application in its current form, without any suggestions yet for modifying it, how would board members feel? And I'm going to just ask each of you. In its current form, no changes. Would you support?
I don't think I can support it as it currently is. I don't think I can support the application as it's currently presented.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
I do too. I think it has too many
Yeah.
conflicts that.
Yeah, me as well.
Okay. All right. So, we can't support it the way it is. So let's talk about some of the bigger questions and we'll work down. So one of the first things the staff points out is the projection, the fact that the addition is wider than the current house and it projects past the house. And we know what our code says. It even shows diagrams where it shows additions that are directly behind. So feelings about that.
I was just reading the guidelines, 4.12, that seems to be appropriate. Additions should be subordinate and secondary to the primary structure. And I do not believe that this is. That sticks out and it is subordinate to the original structure, but it takes away from the original structure. The original structure is so clearly of that time period, and you add that addition on and it just breaks that image entirely.
And I know there was conversation too, because I know that whole side's landscaped and all that, but we have to look through that. We have to pretend the landscape's not there because someday it may not be there. And if we set precedents of letting it go outside that structure, ultimately it could show up. So I like the thought about that. Maybe it wouldn't now, but potentially it would. And we've worked really hard, even on some of the other projects, to making sure that we help them understand they need to align that addition visually so that you can't really see it from the road. And the mass can, even though there's a mass issue, but there's property to go straight back out. So we've worked hard on a lot of projects recently trying to get them to understand that we're okay with people adding to the back, but we want that to be not subordinate per se. We want it to be non-visual from the historic nature of this, not taken away from this building or this house.
Marty, your feeling?
I'll just agree with your comments about not liking the protrusion on the north side. That would be, it doesn't meet our guidelines, but for the reasons that Mr. Jewell just enunciated, we want additions to be not impacting the historic appearance on the front of the house and the historic nature of the house. So I would agree with Mr. Jewell on that.
And it's the same. It looks starkly different when you look at it. You just look at this projection. Certainly, it'll look different, but same. We've tried to keep it inside the frame of the house, inside the frame of the historic house as best we can, especially where it sits directly on Dublin Road. Yeah, there's a lot of trees and bushes on one side, but certainly those today you can see through them in the winter. But it's for me. It really, for me, when I look at that, it really takes away from the beauty of the house that sits there today.
And I share that feeling. We had, and just an aside, we had a project that was approved some years ago. The board composition was a little different then, and comment was made, well, it's at the back, you won't see it. Well, and some people were informed that you will see it. And then some of those people who voted for it said afterwards, you were right, and they complained about it. So you will be aware of this. And so I agree that I think it's too wide and projecting beyond the house. This house is a real gem, and it deserves to be treated that way with the addition. And I'm not sure that's treating it the right way in that particular area. how about the hyphen? Now, I think to clarify the staff's comment about the hyphen,
Can I just make a note just with where the existing. So where the existing driveway is, we have to push the garage quite a bit to the north from like the front or from the south side of the house, just to also maintain the ability to get a car out of the driveway and, or like backed into the, backed back out of the driveway and then down the perpendicular driveway from the street. So we have to push unfortunately, it'd be fantastic if we could push the garage further to the south, just because then it would eliminate some of that structure that you would see in front of the house, but unfortunately, that's not an option.
But you're assuming, and we'll talk about design options later. Right now, we're just going through the different issues. Because your comment is predicated on the fact that that first floor bedroom has to be there.
That what?
That first floor bedroom has to be on the back of the garage. And if the first floor bedroom wasn't there, it's a non-issue. So your comment makes the assumption that that bedroom needs to stay there. So, sometimes we need to look at all the issues, and then we look at the building program too, and how they work together. So I understand your point. In the current design, you have to, but maybe there are other ways to do that.
And then one thing too, just to mention, like the project down on 109 South Riverview Street, they had done a really large addition that extended beyond the front facade of the house just a few years ago. And that's not pushed very far back behind the existing structure. It looks like it's only about 5 feet back, whereas we are closer to 20 feet back. Well, even with the existing structure that's there, we're over 30 feet back from the back of the original structure of the home. So it sets it quite a bit back, really to buffer how it's seen from the street.
You have to be careful because our codes changed. So, something that may have been approved in the past with a different board under an earlier code doesn't necessarily comply with the code today. So I would just be careful which precedents you cite because the circumstances are different. Okay, so I don't think staff report is concerned about the destruction. It's the appearance of that is gone. It's not that the wall is taken down, but the concern for the hyphen is that so much of the appearance of that stone wall is compromised and is not evident when you spread the hyphen out as wide as it is. So that's what that comment means. I believe, Roddy, correct me if I'm wrong.
You're correct. So the size of the hyphen is actually letting go of the natural fabric or the historic fabric which exists. So it's kind of hiding that, even though it's taking its indoor, but there is an urban character of that house, even at the rear. So the staff feels that's been taken away with the size of the hyphen.
So feelings about the hyphen, board members?
And I guess I'm confused too. You were talking about this basement stairway. Is that in this hyphen area? Because we don't have enough detail here to give us what's going on here.
It's in one of the images.
So I thought that the floor plans were included in the packet. But yeah, basically where you see the yellow box that they have, just to the left of that where it's all gray, that's basically where the opening is to the cellar below.
Is it possible to go back to one of the west images of the existing home? Please.
I'm sorry?
To the west images?
To the pictures.
Yeah, thank you.
And then also one of the reasons it is so wide as well is we're trying to work with the existing openings that are within that stone wall.
The photos. Sorry.
So it's set on the south side, that wall is set so that an opening can still be maintained between the new entry and the kitchen area, and then
the door and the cellar areas actually all ends up being stairway because we have it
Yeah.
a
So
use.
So it's that middle picture that we're talking about.
that
this
is, yeah, that is
the easement
that is
to the
entrance to
basement.
the basement. And so that needs to be included. That's the easiest access. I mean, the only other way to make an entry into the basement would be impacting the existing structure on the interior. And this already exists on the exterior. So the idea was to include that in the design and the hyphen along with the entryway, so that then we can build a stairway into the basement that accesses both the old or the original basement with minimum, if hopefully pretty much zero impact, and then also access a new basement as well.
Is your hyphen wider than the stair access and that door into the existing house? Is the hyphen wider than those two elements? It appears that it is from drawings.
It is, yeah.
Well, yes, it is, to be able to accommodate a reasonable entryway
Mhm.
Well,
and a full staircase that has to be, it has to be a U staircase in order to access it. So it's twice as wide. Does that? So it has to be
Yeah.
minimum 6 feet wide.
So the hyphen is going to go from the south edge of the storm cellar door to how far over on the north?
The north edge of the storm cellar door to the, just beyond the window that you see, the first window that you see beyond the door.
You just said the north edge of the cellar door.
That would be the north.
I know. This is the south edge of the cellar door.
No, that's north.
the air conditioning
Is on the
unit's
north.
right next to the north side.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry.
It's
My
okay.
mistake.
No, I just want to make sure it's clear.
But yeah, with doing the stair, we have to eliminate the door that's there now to be able to make the stair usable. And so the new opening is going to be where the window is now that's next to the door. So we have it, the new wall to the south side of the hyphen is shifted over about 3 feet, just so that the door can open against a wall and not into an opening.
So the new structure is going to have a basement under it?
Correct.
Okay.
Could I ask you if, with the addition behind or to the west of the hyphen, what is the concern? Because already the new addition would block the rear view of the house, the old house. So what is the concern with the hyphen?
So the hyphen is only 1 story, and the staff feels it's wider than what it should be, because
In proportion to the height? Is that the problem?
in proportion to the total width, it's wider than how it should be, because we looked at the plans and we feel that it can be narrowed, and even like it can work with the roof, so that we retain more of the existing fabric.
Okay.
If Sean's got the drawing up, Hillary, if you want to see, and I think it's the proportion of wall that hyphen, because you could pull that back, you take the closet out. There are ways to even keep the stair and pull that hyphen in and reduce the width.
So they want an entryway. They would get rid of the entryway.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, no, thanks.
So any thoughts, reactions to the hyphen? You think it's okay that width? Do you think it should be narrower?
I think the discussion sounds like if there's an opportunity to make it a little narrower, that would be working. I think it's definitely outside the max where we normally like to see it now. But again, it's trying to understand what's going on in that hyphen. There's a lot of activity that I'm not feeling I'm grasping, where that access to the basement of the new addition and the stairs going to the old, they're all going to be, there's a lot of work going on in there. So there has to be a landing, there has to be, you know what I mean? That I just don't, I'm just saying, make it smaller, but I don't have a good feeling of understanding what's happening in that little area. I wish I could get a better feel for that, because I don't have enough
Yeah.
understanding to say, well, you need to make it smaller. Well,
It's
I don't understand, I got to know.
It's 6 feet of an entryway with an entry into the new kitchen directly off to the right, and then 6 feet of stairs.
Okay.
Effectively.
A closet, yeah, it's
And-
essentially a pass-through. Got a
Yeah,
closet,
it's as much
down, up.
it's as much as it can be with being able to provide a hallway and an entryway.
Actually, it could be reduced considerably. You could relocate the closet because that closet's taking approximately 2.5 feet. And so if that closet was actually pushed into the addition, you could then pull that back. So you could easily take 2.5 out, and that's assuming you keep the stair the way you have the stair. So there is an opportunity to reduce that hyphen. The whole idea of the hyphen is to make the link between a historic structure and the additions as minimal as possible. And that's where the comments come from.
No, and I completely understand that. I guess I'm curious, from the previous applicant, I believe their hyphen was the entire width of the structure.
The circumstances there, if you also look at the site limits and the circumstances of that project, there are different circumstances there. Also, there was a porch that was not historic that was being removed off the back, so there wasn't a stone wall to preserve.
Okay.
But yeah, it could be pushed back slightly. We'll have to change the door swing coming in from the side. But we have to work with that existing, where that window is at, we need to maintain that header and have that as the opening to the house from the entry.
Yeah.
So we can pull it back a couple feet, but that's going to
It's
be.
super difficult because you're going to run into the next.
Well,
Like I say, I'm just looking at the drawings. Yeah, it looks like there is an opportunity to relook that and rethink that.
So is 2.5 feet the sufficient reduction in this
Well,
case?
we're going to give you a whole series of things probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't focus on just 2.5 feet at that point. But I would look at all of the issues together and then make decisions about what you do where. I think the general feeling is that could be reduced some, and we'd all like to see that reduced. Would you, do you think we've covered the hyphen enough, board members?
I feel, yep.
Okay. Okay, the next question. Are there some additional questions regarding the hyphen?
clear now,
Okay.
yeah.
The next question, I think, is about the massing. And when I'm talking about massing is the forms that compose the project. The staff has pointed out the existing house is really made of two simple volumes. There's a two-story volume in the front, and then there's the volume behind that. So there's some questions about the massing. Board members, how do you feel?
So I mean, if I just look at the north elevation, I find it very complex, right? So you look at how you've put it together compared to if you're looking on this one to the left, you have six different roof lines or something like that. You've taken that and hooked it to a very vernacular house. So it's very streamlined, and it has a very, I'll call it simple in a certain sense design. And if I look at that side, plus if I look at the south side, both sides add a lot of complexity, whether you have the individual dormers on one side and you have kind of a shed dormer generally on the other side, three different pitches on the one side. So somehow if we could try to find a way to soften all of that to make it so it has a better flow. Because you go to the hyphen, I think that gives you a good transition, but then it gets kind of, I would call it a little messy on the other side. So how we could find a way to get the roof massing kind of one thing. Could be the dormers go away if we play around with if we think about roof pitch, and we think about a way to do that in a different way potentially, how do you do that and still get something on the second floor? How do you manage a few other things? So I think there's other ways to do it without the complexity. So that's how I see, at least from both sides of that, the massing is quite big on one side, but then complex in another sense.
Yeah, part of that with keeping that a smaller gable or hipped roof look, or as you see it from the front facade, was to keep that structure and that roof as small as possible, and then making it look like a couple additions were made to the back side of that over time, which is how homes progressed.
Okay. Any other comments regarding the massing?
No, I agree with Mr. Cotter, so.
Yeah, I have real reservations about the massing because when you count the number of forms on it, once you get past the hyphen, you have on the south elevation, 3 different dormers, a projection, and the original volume. And then on the north elevation, that suite could have actually been simplified to 1 volume, but instead it's articulated as 3 different plus the shed dormer above. So, our code really starts from the comment that Dublin is made of simple vernacular buildings. And what that means is they don't have a lot of these kind of offsets, bumps. And so I think a way needs to be found to really simplify the number of masses that make up this design. It doesn't comply with that which is really one of the most important features, I think, of our code when we deal with additions. Okay. Go ahead.
Just again, to go back to the guidelines, 4.12 or 4.12E, the addition should take its major design cues such as forms, massing, roof shapes, etc., from the original. And this doesn't. It's different sections. It can be divided out. As someone pointed out, the original is 2 rectangles, and this is lots of squares and rectangles and all jumbled together.
How do we feel? Excuse me. How do we feel about the overall height?
Okay, I'll start. I mean, for me, generally, we try to get them a little shorter than that, right? I mean, certainly we want it to be, as you say, subordinate to the overall mass of the historic house, and this is taller than that one. And as we said, I think there's ways inside of how we manage the roof pitch and a few other things that would improve that. But again, trying to take cues from the guideline, and it's looking at that, it's just not subordinate in that sense. So it's bigger than it's taller than the house in the front. So I would say that for me, somehow we have to try to find a way to put that in a better perspective with the original house.
Go ahead.
I agree with Mr. Cotter's comment about the height and bringing it down and.
So the second, I guess the second building of the home was, I think actually Lanita informed me of this, was originally some kind of a porch of sorts that was screened in. So, and there's only, on the second level, it's a 1.5-story level. There's 1 room that's approximately 8 feet wide. So if that is the case, and if height is the issue, and we have to be below that second building, then the second floor of an addition is effectively, I don't say useless, but far less useful, right? Is that?
It depends on how you play with the roof pitch, right? I mean, there's other ways to manage some of that. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, as you shrink it,
right,
it shrinks,
and we can't go wider than that. So it's not. I guess yes. That is the question. Can we use the front building or the original building that was actually the home originally versus the secondary building as the
guideline
measure of what the height of the building?
I mean, the whole building is one. I mean, the historic building is one thing generally, and
but it's the lowest height that we're working off of here.
It's subordinate, right? And I think this is where we're trying to say we're taking cues from the massing of that front house and saying, okay, the one behind it should look clearly less in a certain sense than the front one. And I think some of it also comes from the complexity of it,
Yes.
right? So, if you came in, if it was a very one gable roof and you look at that, then it would look less complex and it wouldn't draw your eyes to, I have this low hip, I have a next hip, and then I have another one. So it draws your eyes to the expanse of the whole thing because you're seeing 3 different. 3 or 4 different things. So it gives you an illusion of something bigger from a complexity standpoint. So as you say, you want it to be subordinate. We're thinking about height here, but it also, because the mass is looks in a different way, you could find a way to soften that. And if it was the same height, you'd be like, okay, it looks subordinate because it's the way it flows with the original
And
design.
I would, if the massing was simpler and cross sections were provided to show that you weren't doing things to create excessive room height, I would be okay, I think, with this height if the massing was simpler and you weren't trying to create, your garage should be just 1 foot taller than the garage door. So or the garage ceiling. So as long as you weren't trying to create enormously tall rooms, I could be okay with that height if things were a lot simpler.
Yeah, but and two, with that, like, looking at the depth of the existing home, like, that's not even, like, a standard garage is much deeper than the depth of the existing home. So the structure at the back has to be wider just to accommodate vehicles within it. And then above on the second floor, there's just 2 bedrooms up there and a bathroom, and they're both very modest sized bedrooms. They're only about, they're 12 by 12, and they're already tucked under a 6-foot wall on the edge of each side of the bedroom. So we're trying to tuck 2 bedrooms up into that space.
Well,
and keep the roof as low as possible. We worked through this.
Well, I think there are
Several
other
months.
because the back to get, and you have to be careful how you do this, but to get additional depth at the first floor for the garage and having a narrow profile, it could simply be a shed in the back, and it's just one volume that runs almost the entire length, and maybe it's held back 2 feet. But it wouldn't be, 3 roof volumes there. So I think there are some ways, but here again, you might have benefited from coming to a conceptual review and bringing us options, because that would have been, because then we're giving you the direction now that we gave the applicant, you saw before, 2 meetings prior to tonight. So, but I think there are other design options there. Okay. What?
Just a question. I see the easement over here. Could you load it from the other end, the garage, right? Push everything the other direction. I don't know how big the easement is, right? So I don't know exactly what it looks like, but you
Which direction?
You put a turnaround behind the house, right? Something like this. So you drive around and you come from the west and you push everything back and you move the bedroom in, right? So you can find it makes it long, but it would be a way because I think there's footprint available on this as a lot. I think there's some space, or there's some allowable.
There is also some grade at the back of the property where we would have to then drive up a hill to, well,
Yeah,
no, the garage floor would have to be higher than.
That was part of my question, getting ready to ask, like, what's on the west side? There is options, like you're talking about of rethinking.
I don't know what they are,
that.
right? I'm just saying, because at that point,
Just
then you get
trying to
more or
think
less everything
outside
you
the
want.
box.
You squeeze in a certain sense. I don't know how much dirt you'd have to move or what, but because if you did it the other way, you squeeze it, you push it, you get the same square footage in a different configuration, right?
I'm gonna ask it, but it's probably a dumb question. If we were to angle a garage at, say, a 45-degree angle, would that be something that would be kind of a non-starter?
I think it all comes back
Even if it was
to
a simple
to help resolve this mass issue that we're talking about. And that's kind of where we leave those ideas to you guys. It's just thinking, like, what do we want to do to work on that? So we're really not in that spot of giving those recommendations, but just giving you the recommendations. What we currently see is probably something we don't currently would approve.
I would be careful about the angled garage, but one option, and here again, I think Mike's right. We're reluctant to give ideas, but you maybe here it could be helpful. If your garage was detached in one story, then you put the ground floor bedroom in the first floor of this, so you don't need to project out so far in the back. And then you get a big basement underneath that space that was garage. But that would be a way of breaking the massing. I know I sympathize with you because I looked at the photos of this house, the interior photos when it was on the market. And I know that second floor is real challenging, whether you call that 2 or 1. And with children, I mean, this is a hard house. Now you did buy the house. So, but I sympathize with you because I think this is a hard house. But, and you want the 3 bedrooms all in close proximity. You don't want 2 away from where you may be and the kids are. But if you detach the garage, you set it back, the district has all kinds of outbuildings, and that would really go a long way with blending in with the fabric. Then you tuck your bedroom underneath where the garage is now, and that whole thing could get smaller and simpler. And I mean, as I started looking at ways that, I might approach what you're interested in doing, I mean, and meeting our goals, that seemed to be one. Heidi may have a lot better ones than that, and that's fine. But it's just one way, because you were asking about, I don't think the angled garage is going to fly, because then the mass, it's going to look like a tail, and we may have more issues with the mass. So let's talk about footprint. We've talked about the height. We're not saying it has to necessarily be lower, but simpler. How do you feel about, because I would agree the question of what is subordinate is sort of, it's different for every project. So what do you think about the overall square footage?
And those numbers are footprint square footage or
Yeah, the total square footage.
of the footprint or of the total?
Total square footage, the ground, first floor and the second floor.
Okay.
So generally, I'm less concerned with the square footage. It is a general comment. If we can get it so it looks less massive. I mean, we have in the past given some leeway on square footage. So I have to say on that side, I'm a little. If we can try to figure out how it fits inside the space, I could be okay with the square footage. But we still got to find a way that square footage looks like it belongs.
So does anybody else object to just the square footage number? Okay.
Nope, I'm good.
No, not in general. What's still bothering me is the outcropping of the first floor addition. That's what seems out of place.
Okay. So I think we're all in agreement there. It's not an issue of the square footage. It's not necessarily an issue of the height, but simplification is really important. So,
and I think the bringing in of the side, I think.
Yeah, okay, yeah, and I'm going to go back through because we still haven't talked about the material palette.
True.
Okay, well, and you'll come up with other things we can talk about. So let's talk about the choice of materials. And staff has raised concerns, I think, about the use of the stucco, the way the stone is used, and there may be other questions too.
Happy to go.
I'm not going to talk without some pictures. Thank you.
So, I mean, I might defer to some, because stucco certainly I think is a historic. I looked at a lot of pictures in the last couple of days. It is a historic material. The way it projects on the way you show it there, it's kind of looks a bit with this projection having that against that stone. But if it was the other side, I'm not sure. I have to say I'm not fully against stucco. I might need somebody with a little more architectural view to look at that. The cultured stone, I think it looks a little out of place. I mean, it's a bit disjoint. It doesn't blend exactly with having that water table sitting against the house that's there. I just look at it, it looks strange. Strange is not the right word. It looks disjointed, I would say, in the general sense. And in the hardy siding, I could be okay with that. Is it not board and bat? Is something else? I think I could be okay with that.
I think my feeling is, since nobody else has chimed up, or Mike, did you want to say something? Or Okay. I mean, having a different material at the hyphen and then maybe one other material might make some sense to break the mass up. And the last applicant, there was a suggestion of stone, and there's existing stone. But if you notice how much of that stone, even if it's cultured stone, very little of it's going to be visible. It's really just to give a texture to the foundation. So because so little of that stone is visible, you don't have the problem of trying to match two big surfaces. And I think that's one of the things that the staff report is reacting to. When you see that much of the cultured stone against your current stone, you're going to be really aware. So I think the choice of stone, unless it's just covering the foundation, I would really be careful. And I also would stay away from the stucco. Our code, if you look at the materials, we recommend, we don't explicitly say you can't use stucco. But as I mentioned earlier, most of the materials that are recommended are really tactile materials. They have a lot of physical and visual texture. And stucco is a historic material, but you see it in more federal style architecture that you might see in Charleston, South Carolina, or New Orleans. We don't have a lot of that and I realize you've got the material on the back, but you're going to have the same issue. You're trying to match two things, but they're so close, you're going to look at it and say, well, it really doesn't match. So I think that, and even though the consultant said, yeah, maybe stucco is okay, I would disagree with her on that. So I would look in other directions. I would agree, the board and batten is overused, but are there multiple widths of siding that you use? Or, are there other materials you could use? Maybe shakes someplace. So I'm not really comfortable with the way the stone and stucco are laid out now.
I think the one thing for us is when we were doing it, is just like they had mentioned, not using, or originally, at one point, we were looking at not doing stucco until we received the report back from the architectural consultant who said that she had, I thought, recommended stucco as an option for back there, but we just didn't want to have too many materials. So if we did the new structure and siding, and then there's another material that's on the hyphen, and then there's stucco at the back of the house, and there's stone at the back of the house, it just makes it so busy. So we were really trying to simplify what is going on
The original
with the materials.
The original plans included siding or horizontal siding for, I believe, almost all of it, of the addition itself. And then it was revised with the consultant's feedback.
Well, you're going to have an issue if you do the garage or a two-story structure back there. And if you don't have windows on the back side, there are problems with how you deal with all the blank surfaces. So, I mean, that's a design issue too. So one material that's all the way up is going to be problematic. So you're going to have to deal with that. But I'm not sure, I'm not comfortable with the way it's dealt with right now. Board members, other issues that you feel we should address? Go ahead.
I think you got most of them there.
Okay.
I just saw it on the picture. Remind me about the garage doors.
They're metal.
No, or they look wood actually, but was there a problem with the garage doors? I should look at your report.
Sorry, the garage door will need waivers. So there are steel garage doors and they're painted on the top, and we do approve the waivers for that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
Just because one of the drawings, the rendering shows you originally had lap siding in the original one, and you moved, you changed that went from the consultant's report. Did I hear? I'm sorry, I was writing. So you okay. All right.
It still remains, but now it's just for the hyphen in the current drawings.
Okay. Yeah, there are mumblings up here that the lap siding is definitely preferred
Okay.
over the stucco. But you're going to think if it's a tall wall, what kind of detail? Is there some kind of just trim band that breaks that up? Or are there some windows that helps a lot? So,
Especially if, by chance, the owner decides that separating the garage is an option that they can work with. So we address massing and also spatial.
What was the first part?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have my mic on.
This one's
Just commenting that if you would decide to separate the garage in order to address the massing issue overall, then windows will be really nice to add for the features for the bedrooms that are part of the addition. And it will break up the siding without adding new materials.
In terms of the dormer, do you prefer the one full dormer across, like we have off the north side, instead of having the smaller dormers?
was the reaction the nature of the dormer? Typically, the smaller dormers we approve are up in the roof versus wall dormers, or the number of breaks in the roof? Okay, all right. I can't recall any wall dormers. And the wall dormer, it's just for your knowledge, the wall dormers are the one on the face of the garage, where the wall, and it grows out of the wall. The dormer grows out of the wall. So I can't recall any that we've approved, but, I guess we've approved shed dormers. We've approved shed dormers. I think the concern with shed dormers is it's not the entire length of the elevation. So we have approved shed dormers. So that,
But brought in.
yeah, but the size of your shed dormer probably would not be objectionable to us if there wasn't so much going on below it. And then the other side, has a completely different expression. So, some continuity as you move through, but we have approved shed dormers. So, and because Sean's comment about, managing the height, that's an obvious device to manage the height and get the headroom that you need. Okay, do you have any other questions for us? I'll go through the 6 points because I think it's important that we list these 6 issues, and I know Judy will get these down. And so this will be the consolidated version of the minutes. We all feel the addition is too wide, and it should not project beyond the edges of the existing house. The hyphen, I think generally we would like it reduced. The extent of how it's reduced, we're not going to tell you tonight because that depends on how the rest of the plan works and other issues. I think one of the biggest issues is the massing is too complex. And that is the one thing that stands out as being really contrary to our code. Fourth would be the height. Some of us are okay if you show that the height's not excessive. So I think we'll want to see sections through there to see what the height is in the upper bedrooms. The footprint, the amount of square footage could be okay. We're not saying that necessarily makes the design too big. And I think we have questions about the materials. I think we'd like to see a different material palette. Anything else?
I would just also like to add that clearly concerns about the shared driveway and the access for construction and, working it out with the neighboring property owner is important. And maybe that's first on the list to do before they even finalize their plans, because if there's something alternative being proposed, then you could explore that as well.
And you can come back. You do not have to have full renderings when you come back. So you can have floor plan options. You can have massing studies. It's only when you come for a final review that, and actually when you come for final review, we want to see wall sections. We want to see all the details blown up, larger scale, so we can understand trims and things. So, but you don't need to do that now. You don't need to do that now. Now, we can do, rather than vote the project down, I think we would recommend we table it or until a later date at your, if you're agreeable to that, we just table it to a later meeting.
Table it, or they can withdraw it.
Pardon me?
If they withdraw it, then we don't have to, because
Oh, okay.
tabling gets a little complicated. You have to,
Is that right?
yeah,
Okay.
you're going to have to bring it up again.
We have blessed with a couple lawyers here who know a lot more about these procedures than I do.
Sorry. If you table it, you have to bring it back each time, and that's, we
have
want
to
to,
bring it at each meeting. We have
yeah.
to bring it up to,
You could table it to a certain date, but you're going to have to you have to designate. You can't just table it indefinitely. At least that's my understanding, but it's Robert's rules, and we may or may not follow Robert's rules anyway, so.
go ahead. Sarah's going to add something to that.
We have had actions before where we have tabled something to just an indefinite time in the future based on when an applicant can make responses. If the applicant can respond quickly enough, we could come back in May. There is time from our perspective to be able to do that. Whether that works for the applicant, I don't know. But it's up to you. If we withdraw, then they have to start all over again with a brand new application. Not that there's any cost, but there is,
Some kind of
the hassle of reloading and, opening another case number, which
Right, no, I don't want,
depending on your point of view,
Yeah.
may be minor or major.
And you could, correct me if I'm wrong, they could request, say we table it to the date of the next meeting. And then they don't have things quite ready, but they contact us beforehand and request to table it to the next meeting. We can
Yeah.
just do that, right?
right,
That could absolutely be done. Yes.
Okay.
yeah, no, okay, so
We
Should-
choose that option.
You like that option? Okay.
Refer to table project.
yes, got it. So I will move to table it till next month, or as Sarah said, indefinitely until they bring in the new application or the revised. Would it be a revised application?
Yeah.
I'll second.
Well, I should clarify that. Table it indefinitely until or table it until the applicants bring in a revised application, submit a revised application.
I'll second that.
Mr. Cotter?
Excuse me, Judy, let me check with the applicants to make sure they're okay with that. Are you okay with that?
We are,
Yes.
yes, we're okay with that.
Okay, all right. Okay, go ahead, Judy.
Vote? Okay. Mr. Cotter?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Yes.
Amesser?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes. There are just two things I want to add. The things you've brought before us before to look at on this house. We know you're good stewards of that house, and we appreciate that. The kind of work that was done in that patio and the detail work, it's really good. The other thing, we're trying to help you here. I don't know if you probably are aware of the house across the street that sold for a significant amount of money. There was an article about that in the paper. And probably our leading expert in preservation in Dublin was quoted in that. And he said, it's lost its historic character. And it's lost its character because of what's been done and the way it's been done. And we don't want to see that here. So just want to let you know. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Simple stuff.
Does anybody need, I don't think we have a lot, unless, does anybody need a break, or do we just want to go through the communications?
Yep, I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
All right. Sarah?
Okay. So we have a memo from Mr. Boggs about the consent agenda and the possible use of that for this board. So we wanted to make sure that you all felt comfortable with this and maybe have a vote or an opinion on whether we do a,
Yeah, I can hear you.
okay, I'm sorry.
No, I
I
understand.
can't, but I can't hear myself, but that's all right. Whether we want to do a typical consent calendar where you vote on items in a block, that always gives you the opportunity to pull something off of consent and hear it just like we heard tonight and sort of open it up for discussion or individual questions. Or alternatively, do like we did tonight, what Thad has called consent light, where we make a quick presentation.
If we did it the first way, and Sean and I and Sarah had a conversation with that. And so that's where the memo came from, because we wanted to talk to him about, because we'd all raised some objections and concerns about the process. And so if we do the light, we do it like tonight. The other version that Thad said is possible is we just list them, and the staff doesn't even, we just read the name of them. Staff does no report and assumes we've all done our homework, which everybody does. And then we just vote on everything that's on the agenda as one. Now, the one thing we have to do is if there are conditions and the applicant is in the audience, we have to verify that they're okay with those conditions. But what's your preference?
I did not find the procedure tonight to be onerous, and I prefer that. The idea of pulling something out will create more time. And if there are things we need to discuss with the applicant, that means pulling it out, taking more time than we actually took tonight. There's not that many. If there were hundreds, then fine. Let's do it as a consent. But there aren't hundreds. There are 3. It's really not. But we
This
should
was
have.
kind of my point too, in my little request back to the staff and discussing it, is I really like the idea of everybody who attends, or maybe they don't attend, and then that even goes faster. But if they're here and they want the opportunity to say something, they have the opportunity to say something on the record. Also, we sometimes get comments. You're checking to see if we're getting any online. We could have somebody in the audience who wants to speak up, and that just guarantees that happens. And it's very quick. So if we're not having, I'm not trying to take away authority to the staff or create more work for the board by having just, have it show up like we did tonight and have a quick, review, check. I just think that ultimately is easier and more protective than if we try to write a rule that says how the consent agenda is going to work and how everything that gets on there gets a blanket consent, and then have something come up that is not routine.
So you like tonight's process?
I liked how it went tonight. I liked how the hybrid discussion in Thad's memo about just short list, no comments, brief, and then
Call it an uncontested part of the docket. And then I don't know if the other is contested, but more complicated. We could call
you
it
don't have to
something
call
else.
it anything. Just put them down first.
Well, it's going to be a quick review. It's not going to be a full presentation. So maybe short presentation section and full presentation section, something like that. But
or just, it could be proposed for consent and then that's it. It doesn't mean it's not going to have a discussion, but it's proposed for consent without.
Right, but it's not a combined consent agenda. That's the difference. That's
where
what
you need the
I
rule
really
change,
don't
et cetera.
want.
Right.
Well,
Or
it doesn't need a
follow the
rule change,
Roberts
but
rule. No, he said that you could write it into your rules, or you could do the follow Roberts rules.
Yeah, I remember, yeah, I have to bring it up, but yeah.
I just think that that almost creates, it reduces flexibility and
Yeah.
creates more procedural headaches.
I agree.
Whereas if we just keep going as, because I'm with her, I just don't think we have that many. And I love the idea of having them be considered first. Check, 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 get those off. Because we don't know how long some of our more detailed projects are going to take. And it is fairer for the people who are waiting for a decision to have quick review. But I also think that having it done, like we did tonight, was perfect. And it gave the opportunity for anybody who wanted to speak. And we addressed each one separately, so there's no confusion. This is this one, this one's this one, this one's this one. And we voted on them separately and it went fast.
You know, I look at the cemetery one as a good example. That was quick. There was no controversy about that. But the gentleman from the township wanted to speak. He wanted it on the record that they agreed with it, and he should have that opportunity. And believe me, I'm a candidate for this. A lot of people don't make comments and they decide, oh, it's going to be on the agenda. I'll show up and have my piece then. And they should be able
So I
to
think
do
that allowing that flexibility is the best way to avoid it becoming onerous.
So for me, I mean, Chet has, if we could just call it the abridged part of the agenda, right? Is that he changed it,
Yeah.
abridged presentation. So it's the abridged part of the agenda, and you have a full agenda, then you have other things that are on the abridged section, and you have other ones that are full.
What do we call it?
He calls it the abridged presentation process.
Oh, abridged items or abridged?
Direct to use an abridged presentation process. So that would be the first.
Well, yeah.
I wish I had a copy of the memo.
It's in that second piece. The only thing is that, are we saying this is still a item as a toolbox item that we can still do this? And because there is some things that executive, the executive approvals that we never see, except we see on the monthly basis, and those are just taken care of from on your guys' side that they didn't even have to come to us. But there is certain things like a sign or that, I just don't want to say we don't want to do it. I just say, is it a toolbox item? But how would we identify it? So that's the complicated part. If she said,
I think your question is the difference between the staff approval that we received. Administrative approval.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
And
where
this,
So-
and I think, Sarah, you should elaborate a little bit on that.
Yes. So we have latitude by our code to do administrative approvals. And every quarter, we send those to you just for informational purposes, to let you know what we have approved and to make sure that there aren't any concerns in there that you might want to bring back to us and say, whoa, we're not, don't do that again.
Those are things we've already agreed, though, are within the staff's purview
Correct.
to approve.
That's
And
right.
we're
That's
just
per
being
code.
informed this was
So
approved.
what I'm hearing tonight is that we're going to use, again, what we're calling consent light. It will not be on a separate agenda. It really can't be. But what we will do as staff is group them together at the front of the agenda, and we will make note of those in the email that goes to everybody and say, these are the ones that we are anticipating for no discussion, no public comment.
I would actually, and I wasn't suggesting a separate agenda. I was suggesting a separate section of the agenda.
Right.
I would rather it be on the published agenda that you
No,
are going to
it
hit those
would be.
lightly, because otherwise people don't know that.
No, of course, and it
Okay.
has to be on the agenda, but we can't put it,
you know what I mean?
it's either consent or not. There's,
We're not going to call it consent. You can call item, or not even item
Exactly.
A, or the first three items, just have a description. The first three items will be a short presentation, or I don't want to use abridged. Abridged, I don't like the word abridged. A short presentation by staff, a summary presentation by staff. How does that sound? Could be one sentence. I don't care.
And we can handle that, both letting you all know
Exactly.
and letting our applicants know.
But what if we let the public know as well? That's what I'm trying to tell you. Put it in the agenda that these are going to be hit quickly, and then we're moving on. That way they know if they're going to come for item number 3, they better be coming at the start of the meeting.
I see what you're saying.
And there's no reason we can't publish it. We're not hiding anything. Why can't we put it in the
Have
agenda?
to be published. They're all published.
Yeah, but the words, this will be a short segment, needs to be in the public agenda,
So-
I think.
In the description where it says case presentation, so couldn't it just say abbreviated case presentation?
Let me check with that and see if that's a possibility.
Where basically it'll show up like in this agenda and it'll just say abbreviated case
But it might not be.
summary or presentation. And then also, as you pointed out in the email, you can say, we think cases 1, 2, and 3 can be reviewed and approved without a lot of discussion. They're non-controversial routine matters. If any one of the board members objects to this and wants to discuss one of these, please advise. And that way we know in advance if that's not what the board or a board member thinks.
Let me check with Thad and see if there's that option within Robert's rules. Yeah, yeah.
I don't see why it would make a difference. What you call something or how you describe it on an agenda is not declared by Robert's rules. What is that it be on the agenda, that the item itself
Basically,
be on
it's
the
doing
agenda.
it the
Right.
second way, like
And
you
to
said,
just so the public knows. That's all I want, is that the public knows it's going to be fast.
Okay.
Michael, was your question answered? Because this isn't going to increase the number of administrative approvals.
No,
No.
no, and,
Okay.
and it got misinterpreted.
Okay.
Basically I just didn't want to see staff have to do a lot of extra presentation. I like the idea that they can give us the meat, here it is, and we know that those are going to be up front. That way we can move through them. So that's more what I was talking. I'm trying to help them too, because they're getting a lot of cases that they know there's boom, boom, boom. However we do that, but I definitely think those should be up front. We should know what they are, and then we can get those covered and move on. So we're not taking up applicants' times as well.
I do appreciate you moving them to the front, because before they were being put in the order they were received. And then you would have somebody be in here for 3 hours and then 3 quicks at the end because they just were waiting. And so I think having that discretion to adjust the agenda to have the easy cases first, if you will, the complicated or controversial issues last, or is best.
Sorry. I think we have a plan.
Good.
All right. We will move forward on that. Thank you all very much. At our board and commission appreciation due, we had some conversation about having credentials for the board members, especially going out to site visits. And I want to make sure you all have badges to get into this building, correct? Everybody's got a Dublin City badge.
Yes.
Yes,
I never used it to get in the building.
I never have either, but
I don't even know.
You mean like
what-
during
what it looks
office
like.
hours, I could come in with my
Yes.
badge and they're going to wave
Yes.
me in?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would recommend, because we did talk about this after the discussion at the event, I would recommend that you wear that badge if you're out doing site visits. And then you are officially identified, you're from the city, on city business, and I think that that would be the best way to take care of that concern.
that's a good idea. I was wandering around this afternoon and felt a little funny walking around people's private houses.
Right, right. So just make sure, hang it on your jacket or whatever you're,
Okay.
or have it in your hand
The
or
last time
something.
I inspected the South Dublin, the gentleman neighbor was out, like she described, sitting in his garage out, and spoke to me. So I went over and let him look at my badge and told him why I was there.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. I think that's the best way to do it. And if for some reason,
you know, if you can't find your badge or whatever, let me know and we will make sure you have one. Okay?
We used to have those magnetic ones, but the badge with the lanyard is so much better.
It is, and it looks more official, you know, because it's got the QR code on the back and
And it has the
you
picture.
know,
Mhm.
yes, absolutely. So please use that.
And speaking as a government employee, it just looks government.
It does. It does.
Lanyards, you know, they make it.
Right, right.
All right.
And then lastly, we have a training session on the 10th of May. That was in part of the calendar that we all voted on at the beginning of the year. And can I get a head count for those who can attend? Dinner will be served.
Yes. What time is that?
6 o'clock, I believe. And we do not have an agenda yet, but Greg Dale will be coming up from Cincinnati and he's always wonderful. So
And will it be here or over at?
I think at the
development?
development building, probably, but again, that's not been firmed up either.
Okay. And, oh, I was going to ask a question. We were supposed to have, I thought it was something with city council, not just the swearing in, but some feedback meeting. Did I miss that?
There's one in August.
You mean for the Envision Dublin master plan? That
Maybe.
was, you were there though, weren't you? No, you weren't. Oh, sorry.
Did I miss it?
Yeah, you did.
Was that last week on the 18th?
Yeah.
Was it last week? It seems like it's been a long week since then, but
It was the 17th maybe with
it
everybody?
was the Monday, whatever that Monday was.
Yeah,
We could go last Monday.
Okay. I'm sorry, I missed it.
that's all right. So 10th of
It's very
May,
interesting.
Yes.
all
Yep,
right?
I should be there.
Okay, that's 2, 3, 4, 5. Wonderful.
What was it like? Because
All right, I have nothing else to communicate and
I do have, you know, I hate to be the guy at 9 to 10 or 9, yeah, 9, 10. I have one question about administrative
yes, sir.
one. The one on the sign for Dublin Springs.
Yes.
So why was that administratively approved? And the reason I ask is because we make every other person come and give a sign presentation. And if I was unable to see why that was administrative versus not needing to come here.
Because it's in public right of way. It's not, and it's a city, almost like a wayfinding kind of a thing. It's not advertising a business.
Okay. Because I couldn't also find that in the code. It just gives you the code number 173, something like
Yeah.
that. It's not
I
clear for me.
think that's probably something that could be a little bit clearer in the code. But if you remember it, I liken it to the Franklin Street project where this board approved the landscaping on the private property,
Yeah.
like for the Dublin or the Darby Street parking lot, but nothing within the right of way. So that's what we're equating it to.
We'll make another comment then. I would
All
like to,
right.
but I won't.
And if everybody's good, I will turn off the.
Yeah. Good. Adjourn.
As soon as she turns it off, I'll answer your question.
okay, I feel terrible about that. This is really gross. You know what that is.